Hi. This is the first of what I hope will be quite a few devlogs for a new project that I'm working on, more of a personal project, which is around combining a lot of the passions and interests that I have for graphics, animation, live things, music. And something that I've kind of been thinking about for a long time is this idea of like audiovisual synchronicity and kind of live visuals. So essentially back in 2008 I started a course, university course. It was digital music and sound art, and I thought I wanted to do music. I thought I wanted to do electronic music and make music, and that would be my thing. But over the course of that course, 3 years, I got much more into visuals and animation. I ended up doing animation as a job for quite some time and working on TV and doing graphics and things like that. And then I sort of transitioned more recently into I guess more like developer-y space, and even further away from the sort of creativity and visuals and music, even though I wasn't really ever doing music for work. But I've moved away from that. And so what I guess I'm hoping is that this project is a way of kind of returning to that. So for my final third year piece at university, I had this idea of having this big room with all these projections and then making some music and having these visuals really react in sync to the music. And for some reason, scope or whatever it was, I don't really know why, I kind of massively pared down that vision and ended up doing a kind of animation and then kind of synchronizing music and sound to that animation, which was fairly good. I got a good grade and I put it on my show reel and I got jobs and things for that, but it was never quite what I'd imagined from the original concept of what I wanted to create. So I guess this project is the start of a return to that. I've always been doing renders and visuals over the last 10, 15 years. And I've always been doing music. I've been using Ableton that whole time. Maybe a few breaks here and there, but I haven't really combined the two in any kind of meaningful way. I've done a few kind of musical animations and things like that. But the thing that I've always quite interested in is live and how they can inform one another. So more recently, I've been using Unreal Engine a lot. I've been kind of creating virtual production assets, and I built a whole virtual production studio. And so it's only really recently that I thought, well, I can combine these things. This could be the thing, or this could be a sort of step towards the kind of things that I want to be doing, which is kind of more artistic and more creative and more kind of musical and interactive art. So this one isn't necessarily going to be interactive. It's probably more a musical music video essentially, but I'll create it live. It'll be a performance thing, and I could perform it live, which would be great to do at some point. But essentially what it's going to be is some music that I've made in Ableton and playing live with the Ableton push and my Eurorack system, and then taking that data into Unreal Engine and having it display animations and things. So there's a little bit of thanks to, I found a channel, a guy called Tristan Geiler on YouTube. As I was searching this, I kind of knew how I would do it, because I've been doing a lot of Unreal Control with OSC and MIDI and various game controllers already with the virtual production stuff. So I kind of knew what I wanted to do. But he was doing it a couple of years ago. I came across his channel. There hasn't been a huge amount of updates since, but I'll probably reach out to him because it's exactly what I want to be doing essentially, and very much stylistically the kind of thing I'm interested in as well. So what I'll do is I'll just show you what I'm doing, what it looks like some of the hurdles that I've come across already and managed to get past, and this will form the basis of where we go forward. So I'll show you what's going on here. I'll play a little bit and give you a little demo. So what I'll do is I'll probably play this. Down so you can hear me a bit better. So you can hear the music coming through, and then you can see that it's kind of affecting the visuals. So like when the bass drum is kicking, like this is flashing, and then we've got these like beams that are lighting up. And then I've got other little things as well, so I can turn these on and off. So we'll turn off the beams and the particles, and they'll like disappear eventually. And then turn on this one, this like musical statues one. So with this one, like the melody, every time the melody hits a note, like a little statue is being created, and then it'll disappear after a while. And so the idea with this is that I'm playing this live. Like the music is like pre-recorded at the moment, but it's sending all the MIDI data and all of the OSC data as it usually would into the thing. So I'll kind of show you what's going on with that. So, right, essentially what we've got inside of Ableton is I've got my track, and most of these are samples actually. So what I've done is I've just like turned that into like a MIDI track that's silent. It's not playing anything. But what it is doing is recognizing when there's a note, and then it's sending out some OSC data when it hears that note, essentially. And you could use MIDI, but I've chosen to use OSC because it's a bit more flexible and it's a bit more scalable as well. OSC has far more data, more notes, more possibilities than you can do with MIDI. MIDI is just like 128 values, so especially if you're doing like continuous values, like it'll jump, you'll notice those jumps, especially in things like animation. So on each of these tracks, I've got a little MIDI device, which is one that comes with the Max for Live system, but I've had to kind of adjust it a little bit. Essentially, it'll send MIDI data as OSC, but it'll send it as separate messages. So it'll send what note it is, what pitch that is, and also the velocity, but it sends it all as separate messages, which isn't particularly useful for me because I wanted to like register a note and the velocity at the same time. There's probably a way of doing it. I was struggling with it for ages in Unreal until I was like screw this, I'm just going to change how it works. So if we load up this, so here we go. This is the patch, the Max for Live patch. And if you're not familiar with Max for Live, like it's kind of Max MSP is just like MSP, something like that. Is just like a sort of visual programming language that's kind of based around audio. It can do lots of different things actually, but it's kind of more designed for audio, or it was at least when I studied it in uni. And I've just like changed this patch a little bit. Like before, it was just taking like velocity and the note like separately, and all I'm doing is just like combining everything together into one like message that goes out whenever any thing gets triggered on that channel. So we go with the note number, which is like note 1, 2, 3, whatever, the pitch of that note, and then the velocity, and then I'm sending those values out to Unreal Engine, or I'm sending it out via OSC, and then it's being read in Unreal Engine, so we can see what's going on. If I close this and then just play this, I'll just turn it down actually, so you can like see what's happening. Or hear me a bit better. So in here, if I open up my OSC receiver, this is just like a custom script that I've built for... Hello. I'm doing a video.
You want a video?
Yeah, well, we're making a video. I'm talking about how we use OSC and use OSC to send messages.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what OSC is?
Yes.
Do you know what MIDI is?
Yes.
I don't think you do. Alright, so here we go. I've set up a blueprint, well, a bunch of blueprints that do various like OSC things. And this one is receiving OSC. So there's plugins within Unreal that you can load up in order to do things with OSC and get it to control things. And some of them are kind of easier to use than this actually. There's like a remote control one where you can just bind things like throughout the UI, but this is a bit more dynamic. Like I wanted like a specific kind of system that I could like keep building on. So I've kind of done it like this. So let's load this up. So this is very simple. It's just receiving data from an OSC server, or it's actually setting up a server and then receiving OSC data that's being sent on the network. So it's just a local address at the moment because it's running on this machine. It's listening on port 2347, which we're sending out from Ableton. And then when it boots up, it'll start listening basically. So then we save that to a variable, and then we can use that server to just listen for messages. So every time a message is sent through, in this case, a note data, it will come through, and then it'll like basically do a bunch of stuff with that message in the particular format that it's being received. So if I plug this into here, you'll see kind of what's happening. You can see all the notes coming in here, and you can see there's numbers, and then some of them have 0, and then some of them have like a number next to it. That's the velocity. So the first number is like the pitch, and then the second number is the velocity that it's being hit at, and we can use that for various things. So here we go, let's plug that back into there. We save those to variables, and then what I'm doing is basically that's it for this. Like, it just gets sent out, and then that can be read by other modules. So then whenever I want to make something that reacts to OSC, I can just bring in a function that I built that just filters out the notes. So within this function, it just is always listening, and it can take those notes and then checks versus a list of those notes which I kind of predefine to say only fire when you hear these notes, and also only fire when it's a velocity more than 0, because I get a message for note on with a velocity, and I get a message for note off with a 0. So I can do 2 different things with that. And then from there, it's just about animating, like coming up with ideas and coming up with ways for it to affect the thing that I've got. So for instance, this one, is it on? Yeah, let's switch it on here. This like particle system, you'll see in a minute, it just starts like bouncing around. Go. So it's set to light up when it hears a note that I've said, in this case just the kick drum, and it will also like push out the particles a bit when it gets the note as well, inside of like the particle system itself. So you can get this quite dynamic thing, and especially when you build multiple ones of these together, it can affect it in different ways. And so there's lots of like ideas that I've got for that, and I've built a few here. So I've got this particle swarm one, there's these beams which are very simple, they're just little like light beams that show up when the melody hits. Musical statues one, which I showed before. I mean, I might not use these, like these are just like ideas for things, and I might develop some of them more further. This one was the grid, can't remember. Oh yeah, it's just like this thing that kind of goes funny when you hear the snare drum. And they'll have them maybe interact with each other a little bit more and introduce some more generative aspects. But this is just like a start, really. And then this scene would exist as a virtual production environment that we film in. So where this guy is at the moment, I'm using him as a marker and more of a scale reference, so I can kind of design things. That would be me, like in the virtual space, and then this kind of desk would be where I've got my like gear to like play the music. So basically, like I'm performing at a gig, but we'll be doing it in virtual production. So that's where I've got to so far. All of the kind of technical bits are working. I've got a way of like sending out data from OSC and then getting that into Unreal Engine, and I could do that to multiple machines if need be. It doesn't have to be on this machine either. So if I'm performing, I can have another machine rendering it somewhere else. That's easy enough. Like I said, the idea is to do this as like a sort of virtual performance. So I'm kind of working up towards that. I'll build like a custom track or a custom set that goes across a few genres and allows me to kind of have this dynamic performance. And then I need to work on more of the creative aspect. So now I've got the technical bits working, I need to figure out some more kind of interesting visuals and more interesting ways of it reacting to the music, and perhaps like building in a bit of a kind of narrative there. The other bit as well, I haven't done any yet, but something I do in performances, I have like a lot of continuous data, or I have a lot of things that affect like the whole track or tracks within that, like, you know, effects, like turning things up and down. So I need a way of like representing that in the space, like having some kind of global thing that changes. I've got a few ideas for that, probably with like post-processing materials. And then the other bit that I haven't really touched yet is when I've just got raw audio data. So at the moment, everything has to be MIDI, like it's being controlled by MIDI. And I can bring in audio, like I can bring in like the mic audio and have that like volume data and frequency data do things. But what I really want to do is have that piped in directly from my like Eurorack system, or something like that. I don't necessarily want that to be having to go through MIDI. It would be great if I could, you know, bring it straight from that. Another option though is on the Eurorack system, I've got a way of turning voltage data into MIDI, as well as the other way around, which I've typically used, which is like controlling from MIDI like voltage data, so I can like synchronize my Ableton set with the Eurorack system. So that's always an option. Like I could pipe in like one of my LFOs that I'm using for like kind of audio parameter, and that could be read as MIDI or OSC and then being sent out to Unreal Engine. That's an entirely possible thing as well. So lots of ideas, lots of room to grow, and I'll be showing a bit more as I go, and thinking of more cool ideas. So yeah, thanks.